So now to celebrate our new candidates, or our new individuals. At this time, we'll move forward with the induction ceremony. For each inductee, we will first bring up the individual who will introduce them, and then we'll have that speaker give their inductee their plaque, which will be up here, finished by an opportunity for each inductee to share a few words. So to begin tonight, I'll invite Nathan Eickhoff to the stage to introduce his father, Ron Eickhoff.
Thank you for having me. So last week, when I mentioned to my mom that in my speech I plan to talk about some numbers, she said, oh yeah, that's what a lot of people do. They introduce, they talk about the stats, they break people up, largely because the inductee doesn't really want to brag, doesn't want to talk about all that, they're a little bit shy. So that brings me to my first number. And if you know my father, you know that this number, he's not terribly shy of a share. If you've been around him at all, you'll know that he scored some points in high school basketball. Approximately 1,356. And he might share that with you if you know him a long time, or if you're just meeting him for the first time. The next number is 1963. That is the year he wooed and married my mother, Sharon. And we all know that in order to have a great coaching career, you need a strong partner. So Mom, please stand up. While in Franklin, Ron also coached some sports. Coached some football, won some games, coached some basketball, and helped the Franklin community experience their own real-life Hoosiers experience in going to the state tournament and facing up against the big mighty Minnesota. Didn't quite turn out like the movie, but still an impact was made in that community. So much so that, in fact, a few years ago, when I was at the airport checking in, the guy looked at my ID and he said, Eickhoff? Eickhoff from Wykoff? I said, yeah. He said, Ron Eickhoff. Yeah, that's my dad. Well, all right, son. He stepped around and he shook my hand. He said, you tell your dad thank you. He's the best damn coach I ever had. The next number I have is 9. That was the grade that Ron coached for his 1 year at Owatonna, 9th grade basketball. Now why, in a Hall of Fame speech, it's not me talking about coaching a 9th grade team? Well, it's because last summer, Ron got a call out of the blue from a 75-year-old man who said, hey Ron, I've been calling all over the Sauk Rapids School District trying to get your number. I don't know if you remember me, but you were my 9th grade basketball coach. And the boys and I were sitting around recently talking about that and how much you meant to us as a coach. So if you're around, I'd love to have you down to my house in St. Paul. The guys really want to say thank you and catch up. My final number, since we're talking about Sauk Rapids Hall of Fame, is 15. And that is the number of inductees on the list that Ron either coached or coached with. There are 11 athletes on the list. 8 girls, 3 boys that Ron was either the head coach or the assistant coach for. 4 coaches that he was either the head coach or assistant coach for. It's 15 out of the 45, 47 inductees. So 1 in 3 where Ron made an impact and was part of these people's lives. There's also 10 more on the list, according to my math, that he either calls friends, got them a job, helped them start their careers, taught them in DECA, helped them overcome some personal obstacles. And even though he retired in 1997, and lives in Florida, he still follows Sauk Rapids sports like a super fan. Calls me all the time, tells me the updates. Every game, basketball, scores. I'm at football. Loves the new coach, I'll tell you that. I got him up. And in fact, last night, as we all left to go to Molitor's because it was a typhoon outside, Ron stuck around the game, wanted to watch the second half. Cared so much about the game, even though it was his night, he wanted to see the Storm win. So this is the part of the speech I like to call the so what. We've said all that, so what does it all mean? Why is this important? Why are we celebrating Ron Eickhoff today? To me, the so what is that wherever Ron Eickhoff goes, he makes an impact, a lasting impact on the people, on the community. And here today to talk about Sauk Rapids-Rice High School athletics, where he has made an enormous impact, countless players, and a community that he has given his heart and soul to over the years. He loves this place. He loves these people. He loves you people. You've been an extension of his family, of our family, for 60 years. So on behalf of my dad, my mom, my brothers, Bill and Mitch, I say thank you. Thank you for being part of this amazing journey. And with that, Mr. Ron Eickhoff.
He took most of my fire that I was going to say, so I might have to repeat some of that. I just want to congratulate Gene and Lisa and Tom for all of us entering the Hall of Fame. It's quite an honor for all four of us. Mitch is my son there, Bill is my son, and Nathan and my wife and my two granddaughters, PJ and Piper. And Olivia, she's a junior in high school at Esco. You know, when I coached basketball, I had this kind of theory all the time. I'd say, patience is a virtue. When we're running our offense, be patient. Move the ball, and we'll get an open shot. Well, patience is a virtue for me also. I had patience that this honor would come to me. So that makes me delighted and honored and thankful to be elected into the Sauk Rapids-Rice Athletic Hall of Fame. Thanks, committee, for giving me this opportunity. How did I get to coach at Sauk Rapids-Rice? Well, when I graduated high school, and that was all the points I really did score that many. But nothing. I grew up on the farm. I could see my older brother was going to get the farm. So then my high school coach said, why don't you try to go to college? And I know somebody at St. Cloud State, so that's what happened. I went to St. Cloud State. They had tryouts for freshman basketball, and I made that, and we traveled with the varsity, got all the food things and everything. Our record was 20-1, so we had pretty good players. I averaged 12 points a game. Not the other big number. Anyhow, that was good. And then the head coach at the end of the season, we thought we had some good players, 20-1. He said, oh, by the way, none of you will make the varsity. That was a blow and a half, don't you think? So then in the summer, I got a call from the football coach, Jack Wink. He was part of the fearsome foursome at Wisconsin. He was a quarterback for that team in those years we played St. John's. And that was beat us too. And in this one game, I finally got in the second half, and I intercepted 3 passes against St. John's. I thought that was kind of a nice record for me to have. Then when I graduated from college, my wife told me not to say this, but I'm going to. In those days, you guys are all too young for this. We had a let me see here. We had a board, a draft board from the county. So as soon as I graduated from college, the draft board called me and said, "Oh, if you don't have a job by July 1, you'll be drafted." Well, a little bit later, and I thought if I had to go, I didn't mind that. All my buddies had to go. Anyhow, that was in 1960. Then I got a call from the superintendent of Franklin School. Nathan Lee mentioned Franklin. And so I got a job there teaching business ed. I actually taught shorthand. Anybody know shorthand in here? I forgot it, but I did have to teach it. It went pretty well. I coached in Franklin for 5 years. We had a pretty good. We played 9-man football in those days in our little school. In the last 2 years, we were undefeated. We had some good players, so that went well. And then Nathan mentioned that basketball team that went to the state tournament, and we did our best, but at the time it was a little bigger and better. They had thousands of kids, and we had 69 in the high school. So little teams don't always win that. So that was a big thing for me to get to the state tournament in Franklin. But the best thing, and Nathan already mentioned this, the best thing that happened is that's where I met my wife Sharon. How about a big hand for Sharon again? When we first came to Sauk Rapids, we didn't have children at that time. She came to every game. She hauled cheerleaders to games and stuff like that because if there was a cold day, we didn't usually have a student bus, so she took care of that for me. Okay, by the way, Sharon and I were 59 years married. How about that? Well, my son Bill played football in hockey. My son Mitch wrestled. And Nathan played basketball. So they finally got a basketball player out of my family. So after 5 years, my wife said, I don't want to be in this little town any longer. I want to go places. So I had several opportunities in different positions. And then I finally took a job in Owatonna, but I wasn't the head coach there. And I was a 9th grade coach, and I could see on the varsity level I was going to move up there. And that's when Tammy called me and said this player I had coached in Owatonna wanted to talk to me, so that's when we got together. And those players that I coached, 8 of the 12 were at this get-together. And they all had their college degrees, and 3 of them were doctors. So that might have helped my coaching a little bit. They were pretty smart players, nice people. I was taking classes at Mankato for my master's because I started the program and got accepted there. So I was doing master's degree stuff. And that's when one of my fellow coaches said, "Hey, I saw there's an opening in Sauk Rapids. Business ed teacher and basketball coach." So I got a hold of the superintendent and set up an interview. I had 4 interviews. One with the superintendent, one with the principal, one with the athletic director, one with the president of the school board. I don't know, that was an interesting thing. Then they all got together and came out and said, "You got the job." So that's how I ended up here. And I had more pay. This is interesting. Doug, you would like this. I had more pay in Owatonna, so the superintendent said, "We'll give you time and a half to get you caught up in where you were." that's what we do. We do coaching, but we also are important to be teaching. Boys basketball, every team I coached, which wasn't not a big number, 4, was much better as the season went along. And we had District 19, and this was all one division game. It wasn't anything other than that. So my first year we got there, and we just had we had a fairly good season, but really good for the tournament. And we had to play my favorite competition is Buffalo. Every time I ever had to play Buffalo, we had overtime. So that year we had 3 overtimes, and Ken Niles, one of our good little players, he made 15 out of 16 free throws, and we won that triple overtime. But then the next game was the finals at Hollenbeck Hall, and that was against St. Cloud Tech, and that's when they had the big team. Needless to say, we did not beat them. I did certain things with my free throws. It was very important to make the free throws, so I had a system that we used. And once we practiced, and I had a way to shoot, and once it got to 25 free throws in a row, then we all stopped and paid attention to the guy shooting. And several of the players got 50 free throws. Jerry Schrader did, John Masika right offhand, and they're both in the Hall of Fame. Those guys made over 50 free throws in a row, so that was something we did. Later in that season, we played Albany. That was to go to the region tournament, and they were a little better than we were. We lost by 10, but they went on to win the state tournament, so that was something I can remember too. We won the Rubber Conference, and we scored the most points. Somebody said that already. The most points in the history of Sauk Rapids-Rice at that time. And the kids usually worked well with me. I got invited to class reunions all the time. I got to go to players' weddings, graduation parties. So I think that says something about me as a coach and as a teacher and as a person. One time, one of my players a few years ago came up and gave me a big bear hug and said, "Thank you, Coach Eickhoff, for teaching me the ways of life through basketball." I thought that was kind of nice. And another guy, in the 40th class reunion, here this kid comes running doors, and says, "Coach, I've been wanting to see you for 40 years. I just wanted to thank you for being my coach." That was another good feeling. Well, here's what happened. Then we had to play Buffalo again, favorite team, and we lost in 3 overtimes. Right, Growski? We tried our best. I think we were playing not to lose instead of playing to win. I think me as a coach and the players, somehow that didn't work out so well. So at that same time when we had that big loss, I got my master's degree from Mankato in vocational education, and in order to do the job with DECA and vocational ed, I had to have so many hours of sales experience. So that's when I decided not to coach anymore. It was probably a stupid mistake, but I did it. And then I got my stuff going with the DECA club. I did once when they get that, I was still around at every game and did all the concessions for every sport, so I'm at every game anyhow. Then in 1969, some of my players were not playing football, so that's when I started cross country. So I was the first one to do cross country, and surprisingly, some of those guys could do pretty well. The next year, then Ken Hill invited me to be assistant with him, so I did that for a couple of years. After a little bit, then the athletic director, Mr. Warden, got hold of me and he said, "Would you like to start coaching the girls basketball?" So that's when I started the girls basketball after that. One of my star players was Sue Phelan, who was in this organization, and she could do anything. If it was a press, we didn't need to use any kind of, she could get through any Nebraska, she could pass the ball. She told Sarah Bergeson, "I'll make a star out of you by getting the ball into her." That was fun with that. And we played Albany. Always a hard team for some reason. And they had a star player named Skillicky. And now she runs the bank in town here. And the coaches, college coaches were there to watch for Skillicky. Pretty soon watching some Stevens who was doing better than that person. And of course we had another 2 overtimes there, but we lost in the end. So somehow we lost that game too. Another game, Sharon Sauer, she's on this Hall of Fame stuff too. She had this special play she wanted to do all the time. She would take the ball out under the basket, and we had a pretty good tall girl at the time, 6'1", and her plan was to throw, she threw the ball to her and said, "You take it out." And the other defense just stood around and she put it up in the basket. So she thought that was pretty clever. Apollo won the state tournament previous year, so we were playing Apollo at girls at our place. And we were playing pretty well, moving along nicely. So then we go in and I make my halftime speech. I might have moved this up pretty good, but I'm saying, come on, this is what we gotta do. Let's not let down. Do not turn your jocks in. And Ben notices that they don't wear jocks. So somehow I got through that too. We won the Rum River Conference, and people always ask me, was there a difference in coaching girls and boys? Well, my answer is, girls are athletes just like boys are. So everything is very similar. Here's one difference, however. We put our hands together, when before the game starts, and Darcy Rinke was there, and she said, "Margie, I really like your nail polish." That worked pretty well. Remember that one? We did it. Margie said when we had this kind of bad year, we were playing, Margie and I think we were 8-0 in 1983, and the book shows we were 5-1. Margie, we were 8-0, were we? Yes, okay, we were 8-0, and we had that teacher's strike, school board strike, so these kids did not get to play, not a bit after that. That was not very fun. Lisa Carlson was in that team also, right? Was right there. Yeah, it was very disappointing. That's when I decided to quit teaching and took a leave, and I did some investment stuff. That was okay, I liked it, but I'm out doing that every night and all that stuff. However, I did run into one of the teachers, and he says, thank you, Mr. Eickhoff, for making me start saving money. And I wrote my last check off for my college kids' education, so putting money away really worked. And then, so I decided to come back. So then I came back, and then I was assistant to Coach Miller a couple of years, and then he retired, so I finished out a couple of years, and then Sandy came into, she was assisting, and then she took over after that. So, in conclusion, I would like to thank all my coaching partners, Bob Morgan, Twin Gorth, Ben Miller, Shannon Rono, Ken Hill, and of course Rasmussen and I did the DECA stuff together. I think all these athletes I coached and the kids that I taught, they were so important in my life. All of them helped me to become the best person that I could. And thank all of you, my teaching buddies, my coaching buddies, my students, my players. Thank you so much for that. And Sauk Rapids-Rice, forever in my heart.